Hello there, and welcome to episode 16 of The Tyre Kickers, the podcast that's a cut and shut of classic car opinions. My name is Matt.
And I'm Max. Coming up on this episode, how much is too much? We all dream of an expensive classic, but does spending more money mean less fun?
Also ahead, crush it or caress it. This time it's the turn of that 80s Essex classic, the Escort XR3i. Like an 80s perm though, is it now out of fashion? Or does it still have highlights?
Plus, all your comments and corrections, brickbats and bouquets, and more heated debate about what exactly is a classic car. But I have a solution.
We'll see. So buckle up, check your blind spot, and let's get going with episode 16 of The Tyre Kickers. So yes, we're back again. It's September, so that means we've probably got, another month of some warm days before it all goes south. It is fair to say it's not really been the summer we wanted weather-wise, but hopefully you've still managed to get out and about in your cars. I know we have, in the odd days where it has been nice. Max, what have you been up to since we last spoke last time?
Well, I had a great time at Megaphonics at Box and Gas, which is just full of air-cooled and water-cooled 911s. Absolute bliss. Lovely hot day, lots of classics, and wherever you have 911s now, you get lots of Magnus Walker lookalikes. I don't know if you've noticed that, but there's a real cult now of the 911ers. You kind of like dress the same and have the long beards, and you're really into your air-cooled cars. Plus, there was an amazing selection of 912s, and my car behaved all the way there and all the way back. I'm even slightly, when I was driving it, thinking, is it the right thing to put it up for sale? I'm not quite sure. But what I have done, inevitably, is look at replacements, which I'd promised not to do until I'd sold. But I calculated last week I'm spending about 4 hours a day on various for sale websites. I reckon if I was one of your teenagers, you'd snatch the devices out of my hands. Do you want to hear the current runners and riders?
Well, yeah, before we get onto that, you would be sort of limited on screen time, I think, just on that basis. But this Box and Gasser Megaphonics thing, you're just painting this sort of this vision of it. Was it a bit intense and a bit nerdy, or was it quite cool and relaxed? What's it like?
Well, define nerdy and cool, because I'd think something nerdy is quite cool. There was a lot of nerdiness there around 911s, but I think that's super, super cool. I mean, there was a fantastic sort of 1980s 911 in Martini racing colours, which I absolutely loved. I love those colours. And there were just fields and fields of them. There's a real strong following for 911s in this country. And there's quite a bit of, I use the word cult. I'm not meaning that in a rude sense, but people are really, really into them, and they're really into their details and their upgrades as well. They've got some fantastic upgrades available for them now.
A field full of cults at a Porsche meet. Who'd have thought it? Right, let's get on to these. I'm sure it was good. You had put some pictures up, actually, and it did look good. Let's get on to the runners and riders of what you're thinking of replacing your 912 with. Do you want to sort of read them out, and I'll give you, not that you're interested, but I'll give you a sort of a off the cuff opinion.
Yeah, you're welcome to give your opinion. It doesn't really matter to me, whatever you think, but welcome to give it. I won't listen to it. I'm just going to turn the volume down so I'm not hearing you anyway. But okay, here we are. Honda S2000.
Nice gearbox. Yeah.
MGA?
Oh, well, yeah, you've got me. Yeah. Beautiful from every angle.
Either the R107 300 SL or the R129 500 SL Mercedes.
107 all day long.
Jaguar F-Type V8 had a brief look in today.
Nice, bit too modern.
Aston Vantage V8 convertible.
Same.
Land Rover Series 3.
I thought you were over Land Rovers. I thought you said you had your moment with Land Rovers and moved on.
Yeah, but then I went back. I'm never quite over them. I'm just, as soon as I see a nice one, I think, well, that'd be nice. Particularly in the summer, and it's got the canvas hood on, and you have the sides rolled up, and you're pottering around in the countryside. I think they are pretty amazing. But they drive awfully.
Yeah, you said you couldn't do more than 10 miles in them.
I'll just do 9 miles in that case. And in those 9 miles, it'll be a really great experience and I'll look really cool.
What else?
Currently, I'm a big fan of MGB V8s. I'm not usually a huge lover of MGBs because I think they're kind of everywhere. But I think the V8 is quite a good Q car. It's a wolf in a sheep's clothing. Ramming a V8 into an MGB in the 70s was quite cool. Plus, you can tune them up for enormous power and they always sound great. So yeah, MGB V8.
Didn't we, in a few podcasts ago, didn't you sort of make a case about an MGB just generally was given how much we know about classic cars, it's a bit of a cop-out. I mean, wouldn't it be a cop-out? You'd permanently be at sort of car meets going, no, it's not. It's got a V8. Have a look. No, the bonnet. No, don't walk off. No, I want to show you under the bonnet. It's a V8. So come back.
But is there an argument to say, because I know a bit about classic cars, that actually having the V8 shows the knowledge? And actually, I do think it's a really interesting period of BL, as you know, which I love BL. And I think it's a great V8 engine, and putting the two together, probably the ultimate classic car and probably the ultimate classic engine, the Buick V8, stick them together, does it double up to be the ultimate classic car?
You've got on your list there quite a lot of different types of cars. You've got a modern convertible Honda S2000 MGA, which is, as I say, beautiful car from every angle. I was looking at Tim's one at a car meet. Hello, Tim, if you're listening.
Okay.
He's got a white one. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. 1600, I think it was. And just from every angle, just really, really nice. Just a really, really nice classic car. But you're not going to go a million miles in that. You can go further in the S2000. The 107, you can go a bit further. The 129, you can go even further. Jaguar F-Type, you can go to south of France. Aston V8, you can go to south of France. Land Rover Series 3, you're going to be going to the farm shop, and that's about it. And the MGB, you're just going to be going around car meets trying to show everybody your V8, and they're not going to be that interested because they're just going to walk straight past it. So what's the use case for this?
I'm not sure I appreciate the bringing of logic to this argument. I mean, there's not really a use case about it. It's just what takes my fancy this particular week. I think there's an element of truth in what you're saying, is that some of them are less useful than others. It's only really a snapshot of what I'm thinking. I wouldn't say it's a definitive list. It's just a current list.
Well, while you've been just scrolling up and down, doom scrolling like a teenager on the internet, I had a lunch. Went down to this nice pub just into Sussex. Sat in a pub. Just been shaken and stirred getting down there in your with your 1700 engine from 55 years ago, shaking your fillings out. You've been through all the potholes, everything else. And we just sat there looking at the car. And I just said, imagine if that was electric and you could just turn the key now and glide back home in silence.
Absolutely not. I mean, that's real turkeys voting for Christmas. You're joking, aren't you? You're not really thinking that.
One of the nice things about classic cars is when you turn the engine off, isn't it? When and you turn it off, and it's like, I just thought, wouldn't it be nice to have that electric experience in that car? Because you still have the beauty of the car, but you just have the effortlessness of the drive. So anyway, I started looking it up.
I'm not even engaging you on this nonsense. I just think it's absolute rubbish. 50% of the experience of a classic car is the engine. If you take away the engine, you take away the experience.
I knew you'd say this. I'm interested in the engine. I'm interested in, I am a petrol head. I'm interested in that, but it's not really the thing that sets me alight about a classic car.
You need a different car then, because I think maybe an MGB V8, you'd listen to the engine and you'd love it.
But you and I, how much work do you do on your engine?
Well, nothing, because I'm completely useless at mechanics. Right. But that doesn't stop me appreciating it and actually thinking about it. And, like you said, warming it up. And, you're babying the engine because it's part of the experience. You don't just turn it on and off.
Yes, no, and I get that argument. Once you take out the beating heart of a car and you put an electric motor in, have you taken a beating? I mean, it is like a living thing. Well, my car's certainly like a living thing. When I start it up, it coughs like a 40-a-day smoker sometimes. Out the garage, sorry neighbours. But I don't know. There is an element of it. I know we're all going to get pushed that way eventually, but if I could have, it works for me. It ticks the boxes. If I could have a beautiful classic car in the garage, which I've got at the moment, without it dripping oil, making the garage and the house smell, having to take it to mechanics and throw money at them to keep it on the road.
I mean, I can see, serious Land Rovers, actually, if you're going off-road, an electric motor isn't that bad, and you're not really buying a serious Land Rover for the engine. I mean, I like the engines, the petrol 2.25, I think they're quite nice, but it's not a great engine. So I suppose you could see that, but I mean, anything else, no.
I think what it was for me, the electric classic car, I thought we can whack it in my Sunbeam Alpine. I thought I could have that OCD garage I'd been dreaming of, with no oil drips on the floor, and the sort of operating bay around the car, which is full of parts for the car, essentially a lot of mechanical bits that just in case, or stuff that I've taken off and haven't put back on. I could get rid of all that stuff, Max. I could have a grey resin flooring and some lighting. And I could just polish the car, charge it up and use it. It'd be brilliant.
I think it would be cheaper to get treatment for your OCD than actually convert your classic to electric.
You might be right.
Now, anything else to report? Yes, we have. We've got more details of our live podcast episode coming from this year's Classic Motor Show. It's at the NEC in Birmingham this November, and we'll both be there talking nonsense and recording an episode live in their podcast lounge. 3 p.m. at the podcast lounge, Saturday, the 9th of November.
Yeah, so come and watch us cobble this nonsense together in person. Come and say hello. Be great to meet you. We've also got some details of some discount tickets coming up and also a ticket giveaway. So stay listening. We'll give you details in upcoming episodes.
So lots of great reactions to episode 15. Thank you very much. KCDMGBGT on Instagram says, another great episode, fellas. Just listened on the way up to Bangers and Cash live.
Staying on Insta, at Cars of Bude also reacted to the Bentley Traveller hearse-looking thing that you found, Max, on the last episode that was up for auction and said, oh my God, so much wallet-ruining potential there. It was up for auction. Do you know how much it went for?
Yes, I do. Somebody else loved it as well. It was valued at $6,000 to $8,000. It went for £16,200. So somebody else got it.
Do you think? Do we need a cut for talking it up?
Yeah, percentage of everything, please.
People also like that jade green, was it Sirocco that you spotted in
lovely,
Tesco's car park? Yeah, that went down well. This is Alan74, Mr. Dober Benz, and Studio 49 car spotting. All chipped in on that one. Did you spot that straight off, or did it have to be pointed out for you? I know your eyesight's not that good.
No, I was hanging around it for ages because it was a GLS, and I haven't seen a GLS for ages.
Not a
it's
GLS.
Absolutely beautiful, those Mark 1 Scirocco's. Yeah, they're normally GLs, but yeah, that was good. Another spot yesterday I did, and you'll love this, was a white Mark 1 Granada towing a period caravan. I didn't have time to take a photograph because it was on the opposite side of the motorway, but what a 70s combination that is. Chicken in a basket and bullseye for tea.
It's amazing what you see when you're down your static caravan. Welcome to new listener Jago Brett. He says, great podcast, guys. Just came across this for the first time, and I'm really enjoying the content and banter. So I look forward to hearing much more in the coming weeks. Now, he's got quite a nice car collection, Max, including... Well, you're going to like this. 63 E-Type fixed head coupe, 1973 Alfa 2000 GTV, a 69 Lotus Elan S4 competition car, and a 1970, what's that, 4 cars? BMW CS 2800, is that how you say it?
Very rare, yeah. Came before the Batmobile.
Now, what he's done is he's got cars that are similar, rather than your random list of randomness. He does say, though, it's interesting, though, I mean, those are real pin-up cars on the E-Type, Alfa 2000, great, Lotus Elan, BMW CS 2800. But like all of us, he's still got one eye on what he wants next. He says he'd really like to own a Fiat Dino or an Alfa Montreal or Citroen SM, which are next level cars, aren't they? Some great reacts as well, Max, to our special bonus episode where we asked how much does it cost to run a classic roller, in this case a Silver Shadow.
350 Monroe on Insta gave it a listen and said, thanks for nothing, I've been looking for an excuse not to buy one. Sorry. So
if you've not heard that one, we do say on the episode, it is an obtainable thing running a Silver Shadow, buying one and running it. It's not as expensive as you think. Gold Corniche on Insta says you have to get one. He recently picked up a bargain Shadow 2. This was sort of late 70s, early 80s car from an estate sale, which has proven to be a great car for the money.
Felix Hammer on Insta says, really great episode. I'm still not 100% sold, if I'm honest, as I can't shake the slight old man vibe of the car. Well, if you're an old man, it's not a problem. But definitely an interesting car. It was a really good listen. I really enjoyed it. Would it tip you over the edge of buying one?
I'd love one. The issue that I've got is I can't fit it on the garage. As soon as I came back from test driving that one on the episode, I did Google how long it was and dimensions, and it would poke out the end of the garage. So I think you need to garage something like that, even though you're only talking about a 15 grand car. There's a lot of metal there, isn't it? A lot of British metal that needs keeping hidden from the elements. And I think if it sticks out the garage, pokes out the garage with the garage door on top of it, it's not going to be a good look.
It's not going to last for long, is it? Felix has also given us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, so thank you for that, very kind. And if you're enjoying this too, could we grovel a bit, please, and ask you to write a nice review on Apple Podcasts?
Yes, if you could, that'd be great. August was also our best month since we started, Max, in terms of listeners and downloads. So thank you all for your support. Please help us grow it further, because the more we can grow it, the more we can do. So if you can tell a mate about us who's not listened or is into classic cars, that'd be great. We started this only back in February, so your support has been amazing and fantastic, and it's helped us grow to this point, and it will keep us growing as well. So thank you very much.
Oh, feels a lot longer than February, doesn't it?
You're telling me. So moving on, in the last episode, we broke the internet. Well, okay, we gave it more of a little supermarket car park dent by debating what is and what isn't a classic car.
So lots of differing opinions. I think it's pretty much anything that people love. But you, Matt, have strict rules like an army barber meeting a recruit's mullet.
Yeah, I've told you, it's got to have a chrome bumper. Well, it's caused a bit of chat on our socials as well, with quite a few of you chipping in. Mark Dempsey got in touch to say, I think really once a car is starting to get rare and you can't remember the last time you saw one, then that's surely some sort of classic and it has classic status. He also says the other thing is, I guess that status moves every few years. I guess it does.
This is Alan74, said anything 30 years plus is likely to be a classic if it's rare and desirable. Otherwise, it's just an old car.
And regular listener Keith D'Souza, well, he wasn't very happy with me, Max, and my definition of a classic as having chrome bumpers. Do you want to read out what he says? Because I don't think you'd want me saying it.
He says to say that a classic car is defined via chrome and just looks pretty is somewhat elitist, he says. Max mentioned the 928 Porsche, I did, which is now a bona fide classic. But should it not be included due to a lack of chrome and style? Exactly. Good point, Keith.
No, is the answer to that, because it's a modern classic. We met up last week, didn't we? And we're still arguing about this over dinner, over pie and chips. Well, both had chicken. But so without starting all that again, where are we now, Max? Are we opening this wound again, or have we got some sort of solution to this?
It's a gaping wound. I have a solution, though. With the help of UN and ACAS, I'm going to give us a roadmap to peace. So are you ready for this?
Okay.
So here are my 3 suggested classes of classic car, which hopefully we can agree on. So I'm going to divvy it up into 3. So first of all, 1948 to 1974. So I'm thinking here Jaguar XK120 to the start of the rubber bumper MGB. So that's going to be called a classic car. Anything previous to that is vintage, but that period is classic car. Happy?
Not with the dates, but with the... Go on.
Okay, then from 1974 to 1998, so we're going from the rubber bumper MGB to the end of the air-cooled Porsche 911s in the 993. I'm going to call that, along with many other people, modern classics. You've got classic cars, then modern classics, up to 1998, right?
Yep, okay.
And this is the bit you're going to hate. I'm going to suggest from 1998 to 2016, so the end of 993s to the end of the pretty Aston Martin V8 Vantage, here's a new phrase alert. I'm going to call them Millennium Classics. So this includes Audi RS cars, R8s, lots of Aston DB9s, DBSs, Ferrari 430s, 458s, Honda S2000s, Lotus Elees, L322 Range Rovers, Mark V Golf GTI, Mark 7 Golf R, Merc SL55, BMW M3s, Merc C63 AMGs.
Yeah, right.
Everything I think there is a Millennium Classic. And you would just basically rule those out. I think they're worth including as classic cars of a form.
Well, no, actually, I agree with you. I agree. Classic car, modern classic, Millennium Classics. I agree with you. The problem I had, and what started this off, was the self-identifying of people turning up to classic car meets with a Millennium Classic and trying to pull up alongside a Jaguar XK120. And I've said this from the start, it's a different day. It's a different meet. It's all valid, but it's all different. I disagree with the dates, I think. I would go 1948 to 1984, and then 19 as a classic car, because then your carburettor started clearing off, the electronics started coming in, the bumper started sort of getting ugly, and the car design sort of started changed. And then I think from 84 to 98 are modern classics, and modern classics have their merit, although as I've argued, I think car design kind of went downhill from there, and I think stuff has got to really work hard to stand out or be rare or be unique or be really wow. And then 1998, especially in the late 90s, 98, those Millennium Classics, yeah. I mean, I've got a Mercedes CLK 55, hand-built engine, AMG, built by a guy in a day, signed on the top, V8, 16 spark plugs, 5.5 litre car. Now, I think that's mildly interesting, but I wouldn't pull it up to a classic car meet because I don't think it's not a classic car. But I'll take it to your new Millennium Classics meet. So I think this has sort of solved it in terms of it, yes, everything is a classic, but it's not. It's a classic car or a modern classic or a Millennium Classic. And I just think the problem that is creeping in, I'm seeing this at meets, is the self-identifying of people. Because to be fair, if you go and buy any car and then you go on the internet, you can be radicalized enough about that car. Maybe that's a bit of a strong word, but you can go down a rabbit hole with that car and talk to like-minded people about the car and come away with the impression that you've got something amazing and unique. And it's not necessarily so. It is to you, and that's great. What you can't do is expect to pull it up to a classic car meet and say, this is a classic car because me and my friends on the internet say it is. It's not. It's a Millennium Classic or a Modern Classic. And you can go to a different meet for that. So I want to go and see chrome bumpered cars. That's what I'm interested in. And I'm not trying to force that on anybody else, but I just like those meets to stay a bit unique. And then if there's a modern classic thing, I can see it's a modern classic. It's not for me necessarily. I'm not going to go to that. But everybody's into modern classics can go to that. And then Millennium Classics, I can pull up my COK 55 with a for sale notice on and try and flog it to people who are into those. It's for sale, by the way, if anybody's interested. But yeah, I think that sort of solves it.
Your CLK, you've just described it as mildly interesting. For sale, mildly interesting car.
But it is mildly interesting in comparison to an MGA, to me.
I see your point, but I'm slightly concerned that still you're going to be stuck in your chrome bumper. I'm still going to drag you, I think, into the Millennium because there's so many good cars to look at and talk about. Yeah,
but Van Gogh Sunflowers, that people aren't going, actually, do you know what? It's a little bit, well, I liked it, but it's a little bit old now, so I might give it a swerve. Have you got Tracy Emin's bed? You know, to whack that in instead, that's fine. But Tracy Emin's unmade bed, which won the Turner Prize, deserves a place in a modern art museum, and if I want to go and see modern art, I'll go and see it. But if I want to go and see the great masters, I want to go and see the great masters, and I think that's where you called it preserving them in aspect. It's not what it is really, because it was an era in car design. I want to see that stuff, and I think it deserves its time on its own plinth. And then modern classics and Millennium Classics deserve an equal attention. They're not
we'll just have to do. We'll have to do the car shows on separate days. So basically, you can turn up for one day and then not turn up for the next day.
Yeah. Well, you know my feeling about 90s cars as well. I'm just a bit.
You're just a bit of a grumpy old man. This is what it's turned into.
It takes one to know one.
What we're going to have to do is leave this, because otherwise it could go on forever. But I think those definitions, basically, we can use those to start to formulate a kind of plan to talk about some of the Millennium Classics sometimes, and then we can talk about your kind of older classic cars. Because I do think you can't cut out so much interesting car technology that doesn't have chrome bumpers. No. But they're not, for me, classic cars. They're your other definitions. Okay, is that an agree to disagree, or is that just a? No. I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing with you. I think your definitions are bang on. That's more important. I'm going for the roadmap to peace because I don't want hostilities going on every episode. This sorts the problem out. Like I say, this sorts the problem out of the self-identification of people with cars. People turning up in 90s questionable cars and going, right, I'm parking it in the front of an old style classic car event. It's not, if you're turning up in that, great, come and enjoy the cars, but your car isn't part of the thing. Your thing is next week. You, dear listener, what do you think? Has Max got it right there? I think we're sort of on the money. But if you've got any more thoughts, please get in touch. The best way probably is our Instagram, isn't it? At the Tyre Kickers UK. Comment on those posts. If you can put it on a post, that's great, because when we come to do a new episode, that's the quickest way of us seeing who said what when, rather than sort of DMs and private messages and that sort of stuff. But yeah, if you're not following us yet on Instagram, please do. We're also on Facebook as well, but most of the stuff goes on Instagram. So please get involved with that. We do post lots of stuff in between shows, so get on there and get stuck in. Okay, still to come, how much is too much when it comes to buying a classic car? But first, it's time to do one of our regular features, Crush or Caress. This is where we take a classic car and decide whether to preserve it or crush it into a new fridge freezer. And this time it's an 80s classic, the pin-up car if you were called Darren or Sharon.
The Col de la Colombière, Haute-Savoie, France. Where better to demonstrate the handling of the new Ford Escort XR3i. As it winds up, you can see how Ford's engineering experts have worked their special magic on the suspension, making the new car handle better than ever. Then, when it heads down, you can see why the XR3i is the first car in its class to offer anti-lock brakes, specially developed for front-wheel drive, so your pride won't be dented by a fall. The new Escort XR3i. You don't stay ahead by standing still. So how much more 80s can you get than a Ford Escort XR3i? It's the Spandau Ballet of cars, a time machine to take you back to Dempsey and Makepeace
Or the miners' strike in a jiffy.
But I've not seen one for years. Where have they all gone? Years ago, no supermarket car park was complete without an XR3 doing handbrake turns in the corner. Now they're a distant memory.
That's very true, actually. But were they any good? It was time to decide now whether we visit the Crusher or the Classic Car Show. The case, modern classic, by the way, the case for the scrapyards, well, they were a bit rubbish, weren't they?
Correct. So a reminder, the Mark III Escort arrived in 1980. It was cheap but boring, and Ford needed an answer to the Golf GTI. So along came the XR3, then the XR3i when they injected it in 1983 with a firstly carburetor, then fuel-injected 1.6 5-speed gearbox and those funky Porsche-style Teledial alloys.
And while the GTI was posh, the XR3 was as rough as a kick-out time at a Colchester nightclub. Average handling, bad brakes, pretty horrible engine. Crush, Max, shall we?
Well, I kind of think, to be honest, that it's been done for us because there aren't that many around. I was looking on various websites for them for sale, and there aren't that many. I think partly because they were Ford built. They were pretty cheaply built. They weren't built to last, let's just say that. There's always the rumour of Russian steel was used in many cars in the 80s, really? But there was talk of Russian steel being used from 1986 onwards. The D for dread, as they called it, because they rusted so much. Plus the engine, that 1600 engine, it was pretty poor. I mean, it wasn't a great design. It was slow, it was coarse. It was always outpaced by the Golf GTI. I'm not really seeing a huge case for it at the moment, apart from the fact that it looked kind of cool, didn't it? The boring straight Escort was dull. Stick some spotlights and some velour and a spoiler on it. It looked all right. It
was a sort of Perman white socks and shell suit of cars, really, wasn't it? It wasn't pimped up to go faster or do any more. It was just to look the part. I mean, there was that, as you say, there was the GTI thing was very much a thing, and this car was a show pony, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. If you kind of have that divide, it was for people in an ITV household. I think you describe it.
Snob.
It wasn't perhaps the greatest car, but it did kind of bring that I letter, which was going on the end of every car, to slightly more affordable places, wasn't it? I think GTIs and stuff are quite expensive. The XR3i was a lot cheaper, but it was definitely built to a price.
My wife wasn't allowed to watch ITV when she was growing up because her mum thought it was too common. So they didn't have an XR3 on the drive. Essentially, it was just an Escort tarted up, wasn't it? You know, with the stubby indicators, you know, in the later ones, and just a boring dash. I mean, I think as a car, for me, the XR2 was always the better looking car. It was a bit more complete and just had that sort of sporty edge. The Escort, XR3 and XR3i just felt like a pimped up family car, didn't they, really?
Yeah, it's a shame it didn't handle that well at all. And actually, when you came from the Mark II Escorts, which were rear-wheel drive, which were quite nice handling cars, even the base Mark II Escorts used to go reasonably well and could get the tail out round a roundabout, and they had quite nice balance to them. The Mark III, it just wasn't that nice a car to drive. And I think that's the problem with these Fords, is that they looked okay, it was cheap, but it wasn't a particularly satisfying drive. And I think a Golf GTI, and certainly a 205 GTI Peugeot, was a much better steer. And I think they were around the XR3s because they were cheap, but they weren't really an enthusiast car. And they had a kind of look of those laser graphics. And I think it was actually a style of a substance car. It wasn't particularly nice to drive, and it wasn't really designed to go. So it was a marketing exercise, really, which Ford were very good at. Have a look at this one up on the screen now. This is a 1982 XR3. Now, this is exactly the problem with Fords of the period, is that after a few years, they got kind of what was called Ford tired, is that a bit like the Blues Brothers police car, they started to fall apart as they were going along. Now, this is a picture of a 1982 red XR3 5-speed, but you can see that the headlights aren't quite aligned. The indicators are slightly popping out. The bonnet's got bad alignment. It just looks very, very tired. And then if I take you to picture... Let me just scroll through these quickly. I think it was picture 5 or 6. Have a look at the interior. It just looks like it's been eaten by a dog. It's just fallen apart. The velour's gone. The steering wheel's tatty. The mats have gone. The door cards have... It's just horrible, isn't it?
It is. It looks like, somebody needs to do one of those detailing videos on it, you know, where they just say the before and after, because you just say that's seen some action, isn't it?
It's seen some action, and I don't think Fords, you can ever get them back unless you spend a huge amount of money to looking nice. I think when they get Ford tired, they always look a bit rough. But it's just a sign it was built to a price. It was that kind of Ford white goods car. And for me, because of that and because of the way it handled, it's a crush.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you. I think, as I say, the XR2 and the XR2i was there an XR2? I'm sure there was. Just seemed a bit more of a sporty car. In the same way that, when you see a 4-seater convertible car, it's not as sexy as a 2-seater one. So I think for me, this is a crush. I think it would certainly, that interior is going to look a lot better in landfill. And I think the car itself is going to look a lot better as an American fridge freezer in somebody's house. So, yeah, I think it's time to fire up the crusher on that one. It's not even worth looking at any more examples, I don't think, is it?
Yeah, it's definitely a crush for me. Landfill is a good place for it. In fact, the best thing I can say about it is it's not the Ford Orion.
Well, you're listening to the Tyre Kickers, episode 16. Don't worry, it's nearly finished. But before we go, let's talk about this. This is our conundrum of the week. A quick question for you. How much should you spend on a classic?
Answer, usually about what you can afford, plus 20%.
Actually, that's probably a good formula. But here's a proper question. Is there a relationship, Max, between having fun with a car and how much you spend? I'll explain. Do you get more fun the more you spend? I mean, is a Ferrari Dino more fun than an MGB, say?
Well, you see, I think this is exactly the right question to ask at the moment, because kind of investment values are falling and people are starting to exit the classic car market because they're not making as much money as they thought, which is great for us who are classic car fans, because I think as soon as you start thinking of a car as an investment, you stop having fun with it. You stop clipping apexes and going around roundabouts sideways because you're thinking, well, it might knock some of the value off. And this is where I think partly it's a bit of a problem, regardless of how much money you've got, because this could be relative to how rich you are. But regardless of how much you've got, I think there's a point, and I'm thinking probably around £50,000, where you stop driving a car flat out because you think, oh, it's quite expensive, I better not do that. So I kind of think cars have got a little bit expensive, particularly classic cars. I think there's more fun to be had down the bottom end of the market.
Yeah, I think it's a good argument. Have we got any sort of examples we can throw into the mix here, just to kind of like get a feel for it?
Well, you'll laugh at this because I'm always banging on about these, but here is something which is up for auction between £12,000 and £17,000, which I think is perfect. So that is classic MGB money, but this is something you could use all day. It's a 1993 E30 BMW 318i Lux convertible, and I think these are really good cars that you wouldn't have to worry about using because they're relatively modern, but it's still a 1993 kind of like classic look. So this for me is probably the perfect area because my car's worth in the 50s and I do naturally think, oh, what if I do that? It's going to be worth less. I don't think you do that with a kind of like a £12,000 to £17,000 car. And those Beamers are great. In fact, I bang on about them so much, I should just buy one because they're such good cars and so usable.
You are slightly borderline obsessed with these cars. And this is in your new classification, this is obviously a modern classic, but yeah, you're right. You could buy this car. You wouldn't need to baby it too much. You could use it and run around in it, but you'd still get the enjoyment out of it. And that's probably what we're talking about here. What about if we wind back to sort of, let's pick a more sort of everyman classic. We talked about MGAs. You've got put there on your list of potential things. Let's look at what's an MGA kind of go for. What are we talking about? 20 grand, 15, 20 grand? Here's one.
Yeah, if you look at this one on your screen, a 58 1500, that's 24,995. It's quite high now for MGAs these days. But again, you're not going to worry about that. You're going to have good fun in that with a roof down, flat out in an MGA isn't that fast, but you'll feel it's fast, and that's going to be really good fun. And also the parts are available. So that for me, that BMW E30, the MGA are perfect. And then again, if you went to something else which you and I both love, which is those classic Mercedes-Benz SL Pagodas, the W113s, you're starting to get into the 100,000s. Now, would you enjoy that as much? You'd obviously love it, but would you drive it as much?
Yeah, we're looking at one here. It's a G-Reg, it's a red one, 115,000. 74,500 miles. You then start thinking, okay, well, I need to keep that under 100. I need to keep that low. The engine was rebuilt in 2016 with just 7,500 miles covered. You see how it all becomes a little bit more, the language around the car becomes a little bit focused on how few miles it's done, and how desirable it is, and how unique it is, and how it's got to be preserved a little bit more. And I think that's when you start maybe babying that car a little bit more. As the MGA, you're going to I don't think you're going to stress about putting miles on that, are you?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right here, because it's those incremental moments, isn't it, that build up to inevitably you leaving your expensive car behind, because you might be worried like stone chips or the value or somebody scraping it, or like you said, the mileage. The Porsche market is obsessed about mileage. Well, what's the point of that? You've got to be able to drive it to enjoy it. You don't want to sit there and just look at it. So this is why I'm saying, I think, 20 to 30,000 is about the sweet spot. Any more than that, what do you think? Do you stop using it?
I think you do, because I think, you've got an investment then, haven't you? I mean, we've all got, when you put money into a lower end classic car, you sort of are hopeful you're just going to be able to use that car. You're going to spend maybe 20% on running of its value, running it every year, 10 to 20%, and then you're going to pull your money out. That's your hope, isn't it? You're going to sort of get there or thereabouts back. So even if that sort of varies a little bit, it's not too much stress, because it might plus or minus 5,000. So, it's not too much stress. Once you're up in 100,000, you've got a serious bit of investment in that car. And if you're then starting to think, well, actually, if I do things with that car that are not right, I'm going to hurt the investment of it. And I could wipe 20 grand off it or 30 grand off it. Now, suddenly you're playing with bigger stakes there. And I think, so you become, and we've talked about this in other episodes as well, you're not going to tinker with that car, are you?
For me, it's kind of equation. So that BMW versus the Pagoda, probably 10 times the price, the Pagoda, but is it 10 times the fun? I don't think it is. It's probably 10 times the cool, to be honest. You will look much, much cooler in a Pagoda than you will a 318i, but a 318i Lux. But I still think it's not 10 times the fun. I think you just have more fun when you care less.
Although in my head, I think I'd like a concourse car. I don't think I actually would, because it then becomes like a responsibility, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then you just polish it. And there's not, I quite like polishing a car for about 10 minutes, but I really want to be driving it. You want to be flat out on a corner in it, really. And I don't really think that when you get something that's expensive, you do that. So particularly in my case, I think I'm going down the values just to have more fun.
Classic cars were seen as, especially the higher end ones, as great investments if you just got them and sat on them and didn't really do very much with them. But obviously with the economy as it is at the moment, that's not quite the case. So enjoyment factor, yeah, you've got to keep further back down the money, because the less you've got in stake in it, the more you're going to enjoy it, I think. So what do you think? Get involved on our Instagram. We need to put some pictures of cars up again, Max, because you remember that was a good idea that a listener had. Some of the cars we're talking about. We'll put them up on our Instagram as this show comes out, and then you can comment on there and say whether you disagree or agree. What do you think the sweet spot is for a classic car in terms of money and value? Let us know on our Instagram at the Tyre Kickers UK. So you could breathe a sigh of relief. That is it for another episode of the Tyre Kickers.
But sadly, there's another one coming up. This time we're going to talk about series Land Rovers. Are they the ultimate classic to give you a veteran car feel, but will still respond well to a Hammer?
So thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode of the Tyre Kickers. Bye.
Goodbye. We might have to rattle through this because we're already at 6:40, aren't we? And I've just been listening. There's actually lots of good stuff in here, so we might have to just have a slightly longer
makes
episode.
Change.
Yeah, exactly.